What is up, DW Nation? Huge night from AEW last night. We got a lot of great tag team action from AEW. We also saw a nice AEW tag team title match and a huge six-man tag team main event from this past Dynamite. So, without further ado, I'm Kevin Jones, Disciples of Wrestling, and let's hop into it. So we start off with the tag team match of Matt Hardy and Hangman Adam Page versus TH2. So, of course, a lot of the match we saw Matt Hardy get zeroed out by TH2. But, of course, we see Hangman Page come in and save the day as he carries almost the entire match. Now, he sets up for the buckshot lariat, looking to put away the match. And then Matt Hardy tags himself in as Page is very frustrated as he knows that he had the match in the bag. So, what ended up costing TH2 was a lot of botches. This was not a clean match for TH2. And there was a lot of miscommunications, which isn't normal. But this ultimately sets up a double buckshot lariat from Hangman Page, setting up the twist of fate for Matt Hardy and Hangman Adam Page to get the win. Now, after the match, Matt Hardy's looking to celebrate as he thinks he signed Hangman Adam Page to the contract that he has Private Party on, where Hangman gets to keep 70% and Matt gets 30%, as Matt is now Hangman Adam Page's manager. So he thinks, as Hangman lets him know that he actually had an extra set of paperwork where he actually signed a match for Revolution, where if Hangman wins, he gets all of Matt's earnings from the first quarter of 2021. Now, with that, he of course brings out the paperwork and he shows it as, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars mascot comes out and hands Hangman the paperwork. Now, Matt, of course, looks for Hangman to be an honorable man and, of course, to offer his first quarter as well. So they shake on it. And then that's when we find out that actually Jacksonville Jaguars mascot is actually Isaiah Cassidy from Private Party. And he has Isaiah Cassidy and he pays TH2 $30,000 to beat up Hangman Adam Page. And as they're beating down Page, we actually see the Dark Order come out to actually give Hangman some assistance. And we actually see the connection of Hangman Adam Page and the Dark Order maybe starting to brewing. So it's interesting to see how this might play off, because we might see a realignment of Hangman Adam Page being with the Dark Order. So next up, we see an interview with the Inner Circle as Santana and Ortiz talk about their tag title match later on. Now, of course, we see that this is actually, I didn't even know this, that this was actually Santana and Ortiz's first ever AEW title match since signing to AEW. So it's been 11 months of them being in a company and not having a title match. And they just flat out said it's because the AEW officials fear Santana and Ortiz. Now, right after this, we see MJF hop in the interview and just starts to talk trash about Sammy Guevara. But Chris Jericho shuts him down, telling him to shut up. And he talks about how MJF actually eggs on a lot of what Sammy did. But that was the goal, as he said that it was supposed to be the bickering of Sammy and MJF that was supposed to bring the best out of both of them, as he was looking to create competition within the Inner Circle. But, of course, we saw that Sammy, he says Sammy didn't rise to the occasion while MJF did. So now he talks about how frustrated he is with Sammy and that he made a huge mistake in walking out on the Inner Circle, because he feels that walking out on the Inner Circle means that you walked out also on Chris Jericho. So he said that Sammy Guevara is now dead to him and he never wants to hear his name ever again. Next up, we see a first round match of the AEW Women's Eliminator Tournament, where we see Rio versus Miss Serena Deeb, the NWA Women's Champion. Now we see a very, very technical match throughout the entire match, actually, where we saw Serena Deeb really take control for the most part, and Rio really had a phenomenal defense, as we saw a lot of great mat work throughout this entire match. Now, what this showed was Rio's rust, since she hasn't competed in AEW in 11 months. But we also see Serena Deeb's left knee, that is braced up by a knee brace, of course, has been irritating her throughout the entirety of the match. So really, it was an even playing field. But we see Serena Deeb start to target Rio's left knee, hitting 2 wicked dragon screws, and also hitting the muffler on Rio for a submission. But we also see a lot of other big moves as Rio hits the 619. She hits a huge diving crossbody, and she hits a huge double stomp on Serena Deeb from the top rope. But we also see a huge power bomb from Serena Deeb, all striking near falls. Now, what this ends up coming down to was a lot of technical work on the mat, which was the basis of the entire match for the most part, where we see a lot of roll-ups coming from these two. Phenomenal roll-ups, might I add. But we see Rio escape with the win, creating a huge victory in round one, where her next opponent is looking to be Miss Thunder Rosa. So next up, we have the match of Orange Cassidy versus Luther. This was a very, very quick match, as we saw Scorpio go after and take out Chuck Taylor at the beginning of the match. And then we see Luther hit a huge boot on Orange Cassidy. But while Luther's on the apron, we see Orange Cassidy slide underneath Luther and hit him with a huge powerbomb on the outside of the ring. Now Scorpio sees this and he goes in Serpentico. I said Scorpio this entire time. But Serpentico, he looks to take out Orange Cassidy, but Chuck Taylor comes back in as he hits the Orange Waffle, Orange Serpentico. And then that brings in Orange Cassidy and Luther, where Orange Cassidy hits the Orange Punch for the win. So next up, we get a Team Taz promo from inside the ring, where Taz is actually accompanied by his son Slash and by Brian Cage. Well, we were promoted and teased that Sting was actually going to call out Team Taz, but we instead got Team Taz calling out Sting, where Sting comes out and Taz talks about how Sting is nothing without that bat. How the bat, even though it's a great equalizer, we have still yet to see Sting without it. So what does Sting do? He throws the bat to the side and takes off a jacket and goes right after Slash. He goes after Slash and goes after Cage, but eventually the numbers game caught up to Sting as Brian Cage takes him out with a huge powerbomb. So next up was what I believe was the best part of the show. These next three matches were just a thing of beauty. So starting off, we actually see the AEW Tag Team match of the champions, the Young Bucks versus Santana and Ortiz. In the beginning, we see that the Young Bucks are very, very in sync. When I say in sync, boy, I like the music group in sync. And then, of course, what this ends up bringing when Santana and Ortiz hit a huge tag team move, I can't even describe it. There was a lot that went into it. They flipped up Mac, they swung Matt, and it was something. But we also see MJF look to cause a distraction from the ringside on the apron, which causes the entire inner circle to get thrown out and ejected from ringside. But this didn't really look like Santana and Ortiz needed that much help. But where we see them continue to zero out Nick Jackson, Nick actually hits a huge super kick on Ortiz, hot tagging Matt Jackson, where he runs wild and he finishes with this wicked corkscrew stunner, taking out Ortiz. And then we actually see when Santana gets tagged in, we see Ortiz zero out Santana, zero out Matt Jackson to hit a huge Falcon Arrow on Nick Jackson for a near fall. But we also see huge moves outside where we see the BTE trigger get dodged by Santana as he rolls through, where Nick and Matt actually collide shins. And then we see Ortiz get tagged in, where Ortiz rolls up Santana to hit a huge double cutter on the Young Bucks. And this sets up for the street sweeper, all for a near fall. That drove me crazy. So we actually see Nick Jackson get zeroed out as Santana and Ortiz powerbomb Nick Jackson into the crowd by their parents at ringside. Then we actually see them go in, and as Santana goes back into the match, we see Matt Jackson go for an inside cradle for the win. Now, of course, as Santana and Ortiz are disappointed, we see the rest of the inner circle come out, and they come and jump the Young Bucks. Now, as this is going on, we actually see Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers backstage. They're watching this on the back and on the screen the entire time they've seen this match, and now they're seeing the Young Bucks get attacked. Omega wants to go out there, but Don Callis puts him aside and tells the Good Brothers to go for the assist. Now, when the Good Brothers come out, they're coming out very, very slow for help, which ends up causing the inner circle to retreat. And overall, I can't wait to see the Good Brothers and the Young Bucks collide, because eventually the Young Bucks are going to get tired of this. Now, before the second of the three matches, we actually get the gender reveal of Cody and Brandy's baby. This is huge because Brandy revealed to us that she was the only one who knew. Actually, Cody didn't know at all. So as Cody comes out to his entrance, we actually see the reveal through Cody's pyro, as the pyro is pink, and we see on the Titantron that they are having a baby girl. Congratulations to the Rhodes family, guys. So our second of the 3 huge tag matches, we actually see FTR versus the Seidel brothers, where we actually see that the Seidel brothers are very, very smooth. Didn't know they had a lot of experience, but of course they have a lot of experience from Dragon Gate Wrestling, where the younger brother Mike Seidel and the older brother Matt Seidel. Now, of course, we end up seeing once the control being switched over to FTR when Mike Seidel tries to hit a monkey flip on Dax Hardwood, but we see Cash Wheeler go up to the second rope and actually hit a huge avalanche German suplex on Mike Seidel. Now we also see that the Seidels are very, very quick. They're very, very high flying and very smooth and crisp in the ring. As we see from FTR, the usual stuff, very hard strikes, very, very cunning, and also very controlling of the pace. But with this final sequence, we actually see Mike Seidel is trying to get away from FTR, but this ultimately sets him up perfectly for the Midnight Express for a huge win for FTR. Now after the match, we actually see on the Titantron, Luchasaurus's cut up mask, and we also see Luchasaurus in the background with no mask on. So the lights go off, and when the lights come back on, we see the Jurassic Express in full form. Now we see, of course, them go after and take out FTR as Mr. Jungle Boy Jack Perry puts in the snare trap, and we also see Luchasaurus go for a choke slam. So for the main event, we see the family of the Butcher and the Blade and Eddie Kingston versus Jon Moxley. We see Rey Fenix, and we see the Murder Hawk Monster, Lance Archer. Once I saw this, I was like, what was Eddie Kingston thinking by calling these 3 out? You got 2 of the best fighters in the pro wrestling game, and then you have the best high flyer in the pro wrestling game. What were you thinking? But somehow, some way, of course, when we start off this fight, they start off fighting. We see a brawl between these 6 men when we start off, and then somehow, some way, we see that the family actually zeroes out Lance Archer. Now, how he gets back into it is easy. We saw Mr. Jon Moxley come in and take out the Blade actually, with a huge clothesline to the outside to the ring. And then we see the Murder Hawk Monster hit a huge crossbody on the Butcher and Eddie Kingston to hot tag Mr. Rey Fenix. I can't even describe to you all the moves that he did, because in 30 seconds he made all this offense up, and I just couldn't. I'm just in awe whenever he does it. And then he finishes it off with a tribute to the late great Eddie Guerrero, a very, very nice and high gliding frog splash. Now, of course, we see this is a setup when all 6 men just go in and create havoc. Ultimately, we see all 6 men laying down, where we see the 2 people that come fresh out of this pile of bodies is Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley, and they reign in with the Fist Boy. And this sets up for Rey Fenix to hit a super kick on Eddie Kingston to a huge shoulder block from Lance Archer, setting up for the Bulldog choke, all to get broken up by the Butcher and the Blade. Now on the outside of the ring, we actually see that the Murder Hawk Monster and Rey Fenix have taken out the Butcher and the Blade, where Lance Archer choke slams. It was actually a corkscrew choke slam onto the Butcher and the Blade, and then Lance Archer hits a huge cannonball on everyone, taking them out, where we actually see Jon Moxley hit the Paradigm Shift for the win. Now after the match, of course, we see the Good Brothers attack Jon Moxley once again. I'm getting tired of this, guys. I'm getting real tired of this. So while he's getting taken out, we see Kenny Omega comes out, and he informs us all that on the Valentine's Day, Tony Khan slipped through a little contract that on March 7th at Revolution, we will see the rematch of the AEW Championship being defended by Kenny Omega against Jon Moxley. But Kenny gets to pick the stipulation, and we will see the first ever in AEW an exploding barbed wire death match between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega at Revolution. Now, huge things have happened on AEW this past week. Huge things like the big announcement of the exploding barbed wire death match for Revolution. We saw that Cody also let us know there will be a 6-man Revolution ladder match where the number 1 contender will be wrestling Darby Allin for the TNT Championship in the near future. We also saw phenomenal tag team action throughout the whole match. Throughout the whole show, And I definitely, if you want to see anything from this past show, see all of those tag team matches, especially the last three. FTR versus the Seidel Boys, the Young Bucks versus Santana and Ortiz, and definitely a 6-man tag with the family versus Lance Archer, Rey Fenix, and Jon Moxley, because they were just phenomenal and fun to watch. But of course, without further ado, if you haven't already, definitely check out Jordan's NXT recap, and he'll be back with you guys as he does the SmackDown recap this week. But until next time, I'm Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and that was Wrestling